Esther George, the president of the Kansas City Fed, traditionally considered to be less dovish, hawkish, call her what you will. To hear her talk like that, Jerome, it's not exactly hawkish, is it? Just to dial things back. She's not calling for tighter monetary policy.
Yeah, they're adjusting the dials slightly. At the same time, you could also argue that what we saw from Vice Chair Clarida last week was a little bit more on the hawkish bent, although they both have a common theme, and that common theme effectively is we're a little bit past this inflection point of peak inflation, at least in the near term. And they're both probably going to be focused on the calculus of how to think about inflation over the secular horizon, effectively how it translates into expectations and behavioral expectations of the end consumer. And so if it doesn't translate fully, i.e. if consumers don't believe inflation is going to be peaking well above 3 or 4% in the longer term, then these Fed officials actually have more comfort to be a little bit less aggressive in terms of their policy stances. And so in that regard, I think Esther George and the rest of them are going to find comfort in the fact that the economy is healing. We're seeing the gradual shift lower in those transitory inflationary pressures. And although they're still high, and we do expect that those inflationary trends will head downward into the second half of 2022 and give full comfort to the Fed to begin to raise rates perhaps in 2023. So the glide path is fully on, and that road is continuing. And Esther George is probably firmly on the same road, oddly, that you wouldn't expect her to be on.
Well, Jerome, help me with this then. Do you think they will be successful making a decision on tapering and divorcing that from guidance on rates?
So, that's fully where the communication comes into play. And they've learned their lessons from the past. And Jerome Powell, Chairman Powell, has actually been very, very, very vocal about how that sequencing should occur. We at Pimco believe that will be more formalized in December with a tapering to begin in January. But I think that the road has been well laid and communicated. They'll basically look to spread those seeds and begin to be more articulate in terms of how that tapering begins in September. So to answer your question, Jonathan, it simply is that communication will help create that breakage of volatility, hopefully, that we saw we're going to experience this time versus the taper tantrum experiences of last time. The risk-on, risk-off effects will probably be more instigated, if you will, by concerns about the virus or trajectory of growth, rather than the ongoing concerns about inflationary expectations or the sequencing of tapering.